Hi, I would like to give you some information about how to correctly insert figures and tables into your paper. You should have noticed as you read scientific papers that there is a particular format for these. This will be specified by the journal, and I'm going to give you information on how you should be doing this in your paper. Okay, so you need relevant figures and tables to support your research discussion. You may also want to put a figure or two as part of the introduction, and certainly it would be a good idea to find figures to use in your PowerPoint presentation for at the very end of the course. So as you are reading, sort of keep in mind looking and picking out figures and tables that will be useful. You shouldn't, I'm not suggesting that you should have a lot, a couple of either figures or tables as part of your research presentation, and a couple of figures in the introduction might be fine. You don't want to overdo it, but it's a very useful way of presenting information and making it easier to ground your discussion in those figures. In order to get a figure into your table, I mean, obviously you don't want to have to redraw or retype a whole piece of paper. You can just copy and paste the main part of the figure or table into your text at the end of the paragraph where it's first mentioned. You must also mention the figure or table in the text. You can't just throw a figure in there and expect the reader to know where it is that this is supposed to be relevant. So in the text, you should have some sentence about, it has been shown that there's been a dramatic increase in the number of deer that have chronic wasting disease from 2010 to 2020, parentheses, figure 1, close parentheses, something like that. So you acknowledge where this information is. So every figure and table must be mentioned in the text, and the figure or table would be given at the end of the paragraph. If you try and put it in the paragraph, your formatting will go all over the place. You number your tables and figures contiguously for your paper. So if it doesn't matter if it was figure 4 in the paper that you took it from, it becomes figure 1 if it is the first figure in your paper. If you cannot, in your copying and pasting, cannot succeed in completely cutting out the original title and figure numbering, then just bring over that in your paste, but then write your own figure, title, and legend, and I'll just ignore what's sort of copied over from the other paper. So you number them for your paper, and you need to add a title, and that you write your own title. Oh, I got that in twice. You also need to write a concise legend which has sufficient detail for the reader to understand the figure or table. So you can't just leave the reader to sort of figure it all out. If there are abbreviations, if there are labels of the axes or of the table columns that are not obvious, you need to explain it in your legend. And the figure legend ends with the in-text citation for the source. So this needs to be referenced correctly. And I'll be talking about that in a separate video. Then you need to check that the axes are appropriately labeled, so that make sure that the figure itself is complete. So I just want to show you this by giving some examples. It's the easiest way. Okay. So not an ideal table because it comes out as so small, but a lot of the time when you're taking images directly from a figure. It's from another paper. It's just difficult to get exactly what you would want for formatting, and I understand that. So we do the best we can. Okay, so here is a table that's been cut and pasted out of a figure, out of a paper. And so you can see that the student has labeled it Table 1, given it a title, and ends that with the correct in-text citation for where this table was obtained from. In this case, it doesn't really need, excuse me, a long legend, because up here, it says oral cavity, it says oniopharynx. So all of the it's reasonably self-explanatory. So there's not a very large legend. It's another example of a table. So this was in a talking about spinal injuries, I think, in athletes, body part injured by apparatus, and so there's your numbering of the table. Here's the title, and then here's the legend. It explains which apparatus used, number of injuries reported, and the percentage of the total, and the source. So this is all explains, what the information in brackets is and what the information outside the brackets is. Whoops. So another type. I think it's preferable that you put all of your labels at the bottom of so label your tables and figures underneath the actual table and figure. Okay, here's an example of a figure that was brought over for part of the introduction, and here I have cut off by accident in cutting and pasting it from the student paper into here. So obviously this is a mistake. I shouldn't do this, but it was labeled Figure 1, title, very brief explanation because it's very self-evident, and then the citation, in-text citation at the end. Example 1, that's an introductory type of figure. This is actually a figure from more of the research part of a paper, talking about the amount of DNA damage seen in individuals with chronic CTE versus a neurodegenerative pathology that wasn't diagnosed as CTE, and from brains that had no DNA damage. And so again, figure 2, a title and a brief legend and the in-text citation. So these things should be present. And as you move into writing your second draft, you should start getting these inserted into your text and show me sort of where you're going to be using figures and making sure that the citations are present for them. This is definitely an important step in the development of your paper, because here you can show what it is that the central points of your paper are and the evidence that is supporting those claims. So be sure that you start doing this as you move into the draft that's due next week. Okay, and we stop recording. And the end.